Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week it's all about Goa Kicks. And like most things Goa, it's really easier than you think. So my advice is not to go crazy with it and use the old adage KISS, which if you don't know, keep it simple, stupid. I'm in Kick 2 for this, basically just because there's a bit of a legacy out there. In future though, I'm going to move across to Kick Ninja and Audio. But for this one, let's keep it Kick 2. So this is the default kick, which is currently set to 701 milliseconds. Way too long, let's bring that down. Let's go something around 230 sounds good. We basically want it to be around 1.8. Let's turn off the EQ and distortion, we don't need those. And also we can remove the click from the click layer. Let's get rid of these nodes here to start. And play this back and see what we have. Which is obviously way too zappy, we're not in a Star Wars film. But the trick is, just to keep this line like this for now, I bring this starting attack down to a frequency where you think sounds good. I don't know, that sounds ambiguous, but that's the point. It's purely up to taste. Let's bring it down and find a frequency that we think will fit with the track. So we're getting there. I think just a bit more on the attack. I think there's going to work. Let's just give it a bit of bass as well so we can listen to that in context. We can always fine tune it, but I think that's going to work for us. Now the next thing we need to do is move over to the amp. And currently we have this shape here, which isn't going to do it all. Let's turn the attack all the way up and we'll get rid of these nodes here. So we have basically a solid block like so. What I'd like to do is put in a node just before the last one like so we can round it off so we don't get any clicks at the end. And now playing this back, we now have bass. And the reason for that obviously is because the envelope here, the amp envelope, was cutting off the tail, and that's where the majority of the bass sits. And just to reiterate what I said at the start, try and keep it simple. So we have this line, this linear slope. Try and keep it as simple as possible, basically like this. You shouldn't be creating nodes all the way down here or all the way up there. It should, for the most part, follow this line down here. You'll see that will change very slightly, but the general concept will remain. So for me, I like to work left to right because that's where the attack phase is, and that's where the majority of the sound or the majority of the change of sound comes from. So really the second one is the only one that really deviates too much from this linear line that we had at the start. But even still, the difference isn't too dramatic. It's not all the way down here, for example. So let's draw in our next one. And with the bass. So it's getting there, and you might think it sounds okay as it is, but there's one big issue with it, and that is in the amp envelope. So remember that a kick is basically just a sine wave that sweeps very quickly from the high frequencies all the way down to the low frequencies, and it does so along this curve here. So obviously what that means is, for the start, we have our high frequencies, we move into our mids, or upper mids, then the mids, and then the lows. So if we want to get rid of some frequencies, we can obviously EQ them out, or we can do it directly at source. And 99 times out of 100, fixing things at source is the much cleaner and better sounding option. And with kicks, we need the high frequencies, and we dial them in to taste by defining the attack. And then we also dial in where the kick rests at the end. But the kick has to sweep through the mid frequencies to get from the start to the end, obviously. But the mid frequencies don't tend to sound that good. They're generally quite boxy. So the way to get rid of them is by drawing in what you've probably heard as the little fish shape. And for those who don't know, it's a fish because it looks like a fish, like so. And if we make a dip in this region here, with the kick cycling through the frequencies, then that is obviously going to cut the mid frequencies. If we move it to the further to the left, we're cutting out the high mids, and then the low mids as we move it further to the right. So what we do is, we draw in our little shape, and then we'll fine tune this by ear when we play this back. So let's listen to the difference this makes. So this is with the mids cut out, or back in. And now you can just hear just how muddy that mid section is. It sounds horrible in comparison. And then once we've done that, we can work on the tail. Or tail of the kick, and confusingly head of the fish if you want to look at it that way. Then we can go back to the attack, and we can turn that down a bit if we think it's too bright or too punchy. Generally I find it's best to do this in conjunction with the bass. I think we're there. So as you saw, it's not terribly complex. Basically, you have two elements. Make sure that this line is fairly linear. The first dip is the most significant, and then it's fairly linear after that. Basically just fine-tuning this to taste. As long as you get the initial curve right and fitting within the track, then this is basically just fine-tuning the rest of it. And then on the amp curve, just cutting out the mids again, doing it to ear, and then adjusting the tail to get the body and the punch that you want. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.